Looks like we're good. I'm gonna get my microphone.
Oh, I still have my controller in my lap.
Slightly out of the way. There we go.
Why do I have this?
My webcam's all set up for a 4-person podcast where I am 2 out of 4. So now I'm like caught a little bit off guard. All right, whatever. That doesn't matter.
What are you gonna do?
Fuck. I don't know. Panic. So I guess.
Welcome back to two nerds save the universe, which is it's kind of funny because I just got done recording a two nerds save the universe with Bird, and now I'm doing a 2 nerds save the universe with Wander, and we're just gonna somehow get a show out of this.
We'll reconvene.
We will now have as many 2-person episodes as 4-person episodes at this point.
This Sunday, hopefully Bird will be back, but Shell won't be here. No. Shell will be here this Sunday. But then the next week, I'm going to be gone.
Oh, yeah. So right now, Shell's busy doing con stuff, and Bird's computer is basically eating itself. Yeah,
he updated his Windows 10. Like, he didn't update to Windows 10, he just updated it. And it fucked up his ATI drivers, and now his computer...
And it updated automatically,
black
too.
Screen. Yeah.
And, like, there's all these fun conversations going on right now in Slack where he'll be like, oh, yeah... Fun fact, everybody. The Windows Restore feature activates ATI drivers, which causes black screen. And stuff like that.
Good
like
stuff.
He keeps saying things like that, which is great. Like he is doomed. Computer problems are awful, but they're really funny when they're not yours.
Yeah. A lot of people were really mad at NVIDIA for like kind of overblowing the 970. Mm-hmm. But at least my 970 has not betrayed me yet.
My computer has not betrayed me yet in last year, and I'm so happy.
Yeah.
It's been so consistent.
I'm sure you kind of remember all of my, like, rendering audio woes over the past couple of months. Totally gone. I have no idea what happened to them. They've
Magical
just disappeared.
problems just happen.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about Book of Demons, right?
Yeah, I just got done recording it like half an hour ago, and I kind of wanted to rant about it. So I've gotten several kind of angsty comments on my Book of Demons playthrough about it being a clicker game. And to be fair, the game does involve a comical amount of clicking in comparison to most other games in like the past year or so. The only notable exception that I can think of are, well, clicker games, namely Chicken Assassin, which, for whatever reason, I did a full playthrough of, because I guess I had nothing better to do at the time. I mean, they're addicting, I'll give them that, but that was actually the first clicker game I ever legitimately played, and by legitimately played, I mean I automatically just opened up my auto-clicker and just rolled the game, because otherwise it would have taken months to complete.
You started playing like clickers on accident almost on your channel at one point, didn't you?
A little bit,
you didn't quite know what they were at the time.
Chicken Assassin was definitely like, I didn't even realize it was a clicker game. There was like Plantera, or
I saw you play some game where there was like, I don't know if there was like a god or an idol or something, because the image is blurry to me, but it all took place on like a grass field, and little guys would run up from the left and right to this central thing over and over again.
That was Princess Nom Nom. And that was like, that's an itch.io demo, and it's totally, it's not really a clicker game. It's one of those where, like, you send your people out, they'll come back with things. It's like a very fast-paced clicker sim, but without, clicker game, but without, like, the clicking. Which was kind of refreshing, but we did, like, we did a race on stream once, which was funny, and Bird kicked the shit out of me, and it was,
In Book of Demons' case, the criticism's weird, because it's a game where you run around on tracks through dungeons to fight monsters and pick up loot.
It's Diablo on rails. That's the only way I can describe it.
That's probably the most accurate thing to call what it is.
With like a weird card system. And I'm pretty okay with it. The rails are pissing me off just because there are a lot of ranged enemies.
Oh yeah.
And you can get blocked in by enemies, and all the enemies can move like off the rails and wherever they want.
Like, so, just looking at some footage of it, I kind of got the feeling I'd get annoyed by it a little bit, because there's rooms where it's like, here's a treasure chest, and the rail goes in a giant square around the treasure chest. So that means, because they for some reason wanted to center the treasure chest in the room, you now have to walk for longer in that room every time you go through a room like that. And that kind of looked like it was going to bother me. But the clicker criticism is weird though, because it just it mostly relies on like this insistence on ignoring what genres mean, because it's just not what the word means. Like the funny thing is, I got into a discussion with somebody in one of your comment sections about the idea because he was calling it a clicker, and he kept arguing it's like, boy, you click a lot, and he kept saying that over and over again, like it was going to be more convincing. But based on that logic, like RTSs are clickers because of how often you click, and in this case, it doesn't fit because in this game, like Book of Demons is a Xbox One game also, and
didn't realize.
Yeah, it's on Xbox One, but also, don't you have a fixed attack speed?
No. Yes and no. There is a limit to how fast you can click. No, there isn't. Actually, I can totally just pull up like a auto clicker script and ruin things if I want to.
Is that actually in the game? Oh god.
Yeah. Like if I wanted to cheese the game, I totally could. I'm just not going to because it's not really necessary. Like, actually, it's not one of those clicker games where like eventually the auto clicker script either kind of like takes over as kind of a necessity because your fingers are going to die or whatever. But like this one's just kind of like in Diablo, your character has like a fixed attack rate, so like a clicker script they just took that off, and so I could like just murderate the countryside if I really wanted to, but that would kind of ruin the series, so I'm not going to.
Weird.
It's not Chicken Assassin where I literally don't care.
It actually seems really odd that they wouldn't try to limit the clicking speed or something. But anyway, for those that don't know, a clicker is actually like almost like a slang term for a genre called the incremental game, basically. And those are just games where you click on something to make a number go higher, and then as you get more of that resource from clicking, you then buy other things that also generate the currency at different rates, and that just keeps building and building, and it's like it's the most literal Skinner box ever of just like, I'm making this thing get higher, and there's not really an end goal, but it's bigger, and I'm gonna keep making it bigger. And so like you end up firing up like something like Cookie Clicker, where you click a cookie in the middle of the screen to make numbers go up, and then eventually you can hire grandmas to get more cookies, and then factories, and so on and so forth, and it's literally just a number that goes up. That's the entire game, and that's all it is.
Turns out Shell burnt her fingers, so she can't be plushing, so she will be joining us today. Surprise!
Nailed it!
Wait, no, I really wish I could, but it just happens to be right where I have to cut with the scissors.
Yeah. You should probably grab your microphone, by the way. Otherwise, you're going to sound weird and distant.
Live editing.
But yeah, so I actually have almost like never really played. I've never played any of the normal clicker games. Bird and I did a race with.
There's really no reason to. Like, they're not games, more or less. I mean, there's not like a thing to it. It's really like, it just feeds on addictive tendencies of like, I want to make this number bigger by clicking on things.
There are some that are like kind of okay where they turn into management sims and you can just gather a resource a little bit faster. Like, I'm kind of okay with that form, but they're very rare. And
the interesting thing is that the moment you add too much complexity to it, it stops being that genre anyway, and it just becomes a management sim.
Yeah. And like, I kind of like it though when there is a management sim where you can, even if it is kind of like boring and repetitive, you can bolster your resources.
I think I just realized that clickers are the Orcs Must Die of management sims. Because Orcs Must Die are tower defense games where if you want to, you could run them into the thick of things and rapidly click to kill everything. But otherwise, like, all the passive elements are still there to hopefully save the day.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that.
I just realized this really weird parallel where, like, it's a genre that already exists, and then you add this element of actively interacting with it to try to help. And the difference is that Orcs Must Die always ends in like 10 minutes, so it doesn't escalate. But a clicker keeps escalating its resources so much that at some point it's actually totally pointless to try to click on it, because it's just all the things that make the numbers go up actually make them go up faster than even like a scripted auto clicker can at some point. Like I've had this horrifying game of Cookie Clicker open on my desktop, and I generate 1.8 billion cookies per second. And if I click it, I generate 74 million. And those are very different numbers, like massively different numbers. Like how many?
So unless you like really wanted it, there's no point.
Yeah, at 74 million per click, how many times do you have to click per second to even catch up with your per second rate of getting 1.8 billion? Like, I don't even... That math is not favorable. It'd be like 20 times a second or more or something. Like, that's... Maybe the script could double your progress technically, but it's not...
It'd be like 20... 25-ish?
Yeah.
Yeah, 25 times per second. Like, you might be able to do that if you're, like, really committed and you have, like, extreme Parkinson's, but...
Well, since we've kind of skirted around a little bit, what is your opinion of Book of Demons so far?
I actually like it. Like, I'm trying to remember. Did you play Guild of Dungeoneering?
Yeah.
So it kind of falls in the same, like, vein with the, like, card system and whatever. I don't know. I like it falls somewhere between Guild of Dungeoneering and Hand of Fate. You know, but with, like, a Diablo-style system. Because, like, I really liked Hand of Fate's equipment system, but the gameplay was frustrating. Because it was kind of like
the gameplay was not as well made. Batman,
Dark Souls, or Batman. Yeah.
Absolutely, Batman, not Dark Souls.
It's been a while since I played, and I was thinking Necropolis.
Oh yeah,
which is
not as well made Dark Souls.
Exactly. Like, Hand of Fate was tolerable because the rest of it conceptually was fun, but I
don't know where you're going with that, do you?
I like Book of Demons. I like the idea of it more than the actual execution. I think it's ultimately just early access.
Which it is the early access this time. I was jumping in to correct you because so often you're actually wrong about that.
Yeah, no, it's early access. And honestly, like, I think part of the reason why I like it is they've gone with early access, but the game itself is complete. From what I can tell. Like, it's missing two classes.
What's it called? Darkest Dungeon? Where the early access original launch of Darkest Dungeon and the version that we have right now is functionally almost identical. There's a few different mechanical changes, and there's a few different, like, there's corpses now, and 2 new classes, and stuff like that, but, like, it plays exactly the same.
I actually spent a lot of time comparing the two of them, and this is part of the reason why people got pissed off at me. Because I was complaining that Darkest Dungeon was kind of a little repetitive after a while. That, you know, it was a deep game, but it wasn't deep enough for the length of content that it took to beat it all. And people got angry at me for this because how can you compare Darkest Dungeon to this dumb clicker game? And it's like, it's not a clicker game. And
I would say Darkest Dungeon probably looks like it has more depth than this game does so far.
Absolutely.
But yeah, once you get to, like, as somebody who's beaten Darkest Dungeon before in its earlier incarnations where it seemed better paced and has tried to force himself to keep playing through the modern version of the game and its ungodly number of bosses and everything like that, the current version of Darkest Dungeon I don't think necessarily has enough variety and depth to it just to support being like 100 hours long. Because it's incredibly long now after multiple patches.
Whereas, like, Book of Demons for me, you can't grind. You can't go back and repeat levels. Which, like, for the first 2 episodes, I was like, how do I go back and grind? Because I'm so keyed in for that for, Diablo likes. If I'm having trouble, I have to go back and grind. They don't let you do that. The game automatically adjusts its difficulty to, like, kind of suit your needs and, like, be just challenging enough that you're forced to, like, actually consider your decisions and not just, like, click spam your way through the game. Which, like, I think part of it is I like the game because I respect it. The execution is still super frustrating for my part. Like, the game uses really heavy use of status effects, and I find myself more often than not, like, sandwiched between 2 boulders, can't move because I'm surrounded with spiders, on fire, also frozen for some reason, and poisoned, and I'm, like, screaming. And I
gotta say with this game, like, just on that topic, like, giving it a shot, I'll probably try to do, like, a one-off episode just to test it so I can actually know what it's like exactly, but I will say that every time I've looked at about any video or gameplay of it does not look like my jam so far.
I think it's one of those games that it's almost more fun to play, and truly I do think it belongs on mobile first. But it's not fun to watch. There are a number of like games there that just aren't worth watching, period. Like Cryptark was a really fun game, and I think kind of goes in the same vein of really frustrating, really fun, but not exactly enjoyable to watch because it's so self-similar and chaotic that it's just like, I don't know what's going on and I don't feel like dealing with it.
That's an interesting thing about the concept of people watching stuff in the first place, is that if you have like a hardcore audience that's super into the specific game, you can get away with a lot sometimes. But there's a lot of games that people only are going to watch because it's on your channel, but they never had any interest in the game, and watching it hasn't sold them on it at all. And so for those kinds of games, like say Scrap Mechanic, where I guarantee you, you have a huge audience for that game, and a lot of them probably don't even own the game or ever play it in many cases.
Yeah. I actually have a lot of people asking me where they can download Scrap Mechanic. Where how much does it cost? And I'm just like, it's on Steam. Like,
yep.
Oh yeah,
it's not complicated.
You will never outrun people who don't know how to find games, even though they're on a computer. Where if you can watch a YouTube video, you're seconds away from finding out this information, but they never try to find that information that way. But yeah, like Scrap Mechanic's the type of game where it's almost more fun to watch than to play in some cases. And like that's its big thing, is how, like, watch the wacky thing happen. And some games like Book of Demons are probably the absolute antithesis of that, where you're kind of doing a samey thing where a character is walking on hallways and mobs of enemies surround them and you click on them to kill them. And so from a viewer perspective, you're kind of watching the same thing forever, which could be tough to present to anybody, even if the game itself may be fun.
Yeah, it also feels like a game that truly belongs mobile first, and I think that's part of the problem, that the gameplay isn't super engaging externally, and it would, I mean, with the tapping and whatnot, it would actually work really
like of the
well
criticisms I saw, the one about it looking like a mobile port totally flew. Like, that was like, yep, that sounds about right.
Oh yeah,
it's just the part about it being a clicker that I'm like, no, that's not what words mean.
Yeah,
you can't just make up what words mean. Come on, man. Yeah, I've seen a few instances of that, of just people kind of just making up definitions as they go along now.
Sorry, I can't contribute to any of this. I do not know about the games that you're referring to.
She hasn't been here when I've been playing it.
Yeah, we're probably about done with it anyway, to be honest.
Yeah, I just want to say the last thing. It's got I kind of talked about it with the Hand of Fate style like equipment system, where like you get a bunch of cards and you can kind of build your equipment around it, and each thing does something different. So I picked up an axe that doesn't set enemies on fire, but will routinely just put fire fields on the ground. And so originally I had that, but I was burning myself to death because I was affected by it. So now I have boots that make it so I'm immune to fire, and I'm kind of like building this nice combo.
You're turning your character into a warframe. Where you just AoE fire everything by existing.
I just really like that upgrade system, because there's no gear treadmill. There's just like maybe 20 overall power-ups that you can slot in and kind of
just a weird thing where you pick up traits and you just grab the traits you want.
Yeah, and I wish there were more games that had that. Like, going back to Necropolis for a second, if Necropolis had this like Book of Demons upgrade system, it would have been like 9 times better, just because it would have been something to consider and like enjoy.
It's probably because more or less it's not an RPG style gear progression system, and instead it's more of a Binding of Isaac pickup system.
Yeah.
Where like, this thing does this thing, period. Hope I find it. Or hope I can buy it, or whatever the various ways are that you can find items in the game.
Yeah, well, Book of Demons, you just get them kind of randomly, and by the end of the game, you'll probably have all of them. But I don't know, I like that upgrade system, because it's a very fun way of giving players a sense of control without overwhelming them with choice or fluff. Because I was playing Battleborn last night, and I just get random shit. And it's like, is this good? Is this good? I have no idea, and it also probably doesn't matter. Like, I have an item that gives me 5% sprint speed, and I'm like, I guess I'll take it, because my alternatives is something that reduces my damage by 5%. It's like,
The problem of having too much loot and not knowing what to prioritize anymore.
Yeah, like, I would much rather just have, like, here's the breastplate. The breastplate does this. There's only one breastplate in the game, and if you want to have extra tankiness, there you are. Or you could get the boots so you run fast, that kind of thing.
I still feel like Dark Souls really nails this nice equilibrium of constantly giving you new stuff, but that stuff doesn't have to be an upgrade or a downgrade necessarily, but they keep giving you more and more options of things, and then the specific items you like, you can then linearly upgrade because you want them to be better. And it's like such a nice, elegant system.
By Dark Souls 3, I think they lost it a little bit, because it pissed me off that the basic straight sword was better than any of the other straight swords in the game. Like,
I think I heard the Dark Sword or something like that was supposed to be better, though.
Nope. Straight sword did more damage. Dark sword had a better special. And so it was kind of a trade-off that...
Oh, wait, maybe it was that Dark Sword was somehow bullshit in PvP or something? I think I've heard it had some absurd range it wasn't supposed to have, and it would just destroy people.
It had a better combo. Where I know what you're talking about, but like if we're talking flat damage, it was 100% the straight sword.
And people got mad at me for using a rapier. The funny thing is that if you read enough about Dark Souls, you just find people very vehemently arguing that about half the game's weapons are bullshit and overpowered, and then they never... No one takes a moment to step back and notice how the people are saying this about everything, and at some point maybe that just means that they're actually kind of balanced in some cases. It's an experience sometimes. I've played multiple Souls games with completely different playstyles and been told almost every single time that oftentimes in the same video I'll be told that my build is unviable and unusable, and I'll also be told that it's overpowered, that I'm ruining the game. And I'll be told that no matter how I play any Dark Souls or Bloodborne game forever. It's just like a weird issue the sub-community has.
People are always weirdly cranky about
people that do things differently from them.
I really don't like games where there is a clearly definable meta for like a particular class and something, and you have to play with that combination of spells, those stats, and if you try to create a new mechanic within that class, people are just like, no, you can only play it this way.
That's one of the things, that's actually one of the reasons why I largely shy away from playing virtually anything online ever, is that there's a lot of freedom of expression, especially in anything with even vaguely RPG mechanics in them, where you can do a lot of completely different things with your playstyle and have a different experience along the way. But if it's online, you get railroaded into having to deal with certain types of strategies, or you will just lose. And that's just it. And if it's team-based, you'll even be having people angry at you for not using specific strategies that you're expected to use as a teammate. And like that's just a whole nightmare of things I don't like dealing with necessarily.
Yeah, like did back in the day, people be like, oh, you're this spec in World of Warcraft for this class? You know, change to a different spec. This one's garbage.
Oh, yeah. That was my job, was to tell people to do that. Because I was the rogue class leader in my raiding guild back in like 2010 or something like that. Like
I was the Death Knight class leader, and I was just like, I don't know, just don't be the tank spec and we'll probably be fine. And the answer is yes. It was great.
There was you had to play a rogue really specific ways, and it had to be like a combat rogue with certain elements of like damage over time coming from multiple types of bleeds and your poison, while also maintaining slice and dice and then prioritizing specific stats just to be viable. Otherwise, every single DPS in the entire guild would just stomp you, and you would not be contributing to the group, because like the difference was massive between playing rogue correctly and playing it incorrectly. Partly probably because maybe even compared to Death Knight, it was probably more complicated due to its age as a class.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Death Knight wasn't old yet, and this is before they pared down all of the movesets.
Well, now they've completely changed the nature of certain specs.
Oh yeah.
Even when I say like they've pared it down, I mean my bar like 0 through 9 was still filled, but the rogues had like all bars filled, and it was
situational skills.
Yeah,
I had a raid encounter in WoW where myself and the other two rogues had to go into our own separate TeamSpeak channel that was separate from the rest of the raid, so we could call out our kick rotations, because there was a boss that would constantly cast, and if a single spell got through, we'd actually wipe as a raid. Like, we had moments like that. Stressful afternoons.
For goodness sake. At that point, it's not just a game anymore.
Oh, yeah.
So
vanilla rating and Burning Crusade rating, and I can't speak to anything after that, but I've heard some of it's gotten easier and harder from time to time. For a while there, it was basically like volunteering to have like a job that you don't get paid for.
You'd be
there for 8 hours.
Like a full-time raider.
One thing that I'm upset about is that I know that we've been doing dungeons every once in a while, but I feel like they're done completely out of context. Like, wasn't the original setup supposed to be you do the quest in an area, and then at the end of the area there's a dungeon?
It was much more prevalent in the beginning of the game. Like, I specifically remember Dead Mines had this huge build-up to it. But that kind of dropped off after a while.
Yeah,
it was more or less
tomorrow,
true. If you played the original version of the game, then you'd go into a zone, you'd level up there for hours on end, you'd do every single quest and because of how slow progression was and everything. And then at the end, you'd get quests that would divert you towards a dungeon, which you'd have to walk to on foot, and then you'd do the dungeon, which was the culmination of the storyline. And I actually got a taste of this like a year ago when we were in that one Swamp of Sorrows, and you guys all logged off for the day. But I was behind on level, so I grinded for a while. I ended up finishing every single quest in Swamp of Sorrows, which ended up taking you into that weird ziggurat place that we did the instances
in the center with all the green dragons. Yeah,
and like there's like weird subterranean areas that are inside the ziggurat, but not inside the instance. And you do all of those for even more story quests, and then you get an achievement for finishing every story quest in all of Swamp of Sorrows. And then that's around the time you're supposed to actually be doing the dungeon finally. The problem is that, and this is actually why people wanted to have, say, that one server where it's like, this is vanilla WoW forever and stuff like that, is because you kind of can't have the experience anymore unless you're actively restraining yourself forever. Because if you go into a zone, you overlevel it in like an hour. Like,
now, is that because they boosted the experience that you receive from everything?
Yeah.
1000% yes. Absolutely.
5-10 times.
Like, you've heard me rant about this during our playthrough even of World of Warcraft, is that they've neutered most of how that game flows for the entire leveling experience because of how old it is. Because that content, especially the first continents, are 10 years old now. And they don't care about it. They only want you to get to the latest expansion everyone's talking about, because that's where all their money's revolving around. So they just want you to get through that zone as fast as possible. Like, you can just do instance matchmaking it and never really set foot in the actual open world for the whole path to the max level. It's probably more efficient and gets you better gear, actually. At this point, the only reason to level up in the open world is because you feel like it, and you're trying to recapture what the game originally played like, but you can't quite... You only get like a weird, abridged, truncated version of it.
I know that... Whoa, that's a mech. He's playing Starbound.
Don't reference what I'm doing.
Sorry, you were making
Wander's
a face.
playing video games, doing the podcast again.
I do it all the time. It's something for me to do.
So
I actually have trouble focusing on things unless I'm like specifically
It's why you're a Let's Player.
Doing something. It's true. Yeah.
In any case, I think tomorrow they're actually going to launch Demon Hunters for those who have pre-ordered the expansion.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's going to be like you can make one and then play through the starting area, or how that works.
So with I think you can only play the starting area. I think I read that in the patch actually. But
yeah, so it's like the Death Knight starting thing.
It kind of highlights how weird expansions are as a concept for World of Warcraft and things like that, because like the new patch that makes the game play like the next expansion came out weeks ago, and now the new the new class is coming out weeks before the game comes out, and by the time the actual expansion launches, we'll all be pre-patched to have all the content on it. So it leads you to feel weird about the very concept that like it's still really popular to go to GameStop and buy a cardboard box that has like the World of Warcraft expansion printed on the cover and everything, when like that whole part's totally divorced from any of the process of getting the game to have an expansion anymore. So the delivery systems aren't even in tune with that concept at this point.
Right. I mean, the box is always going to be much slower than the digital download, but the digital download gives them the perks. So it's sort of maybe it's a win-win for them. I mean, they don't have to pay as much into physical copies. And the physical copies really only make them profit. Well, the thing is, it would be riskier for the stores to purchase them, would it?
I just find the concept generally amusing that people will still go to a store to buy this physical copy, but like it's a game that will be pre-patched already for their like at home beforehand. So like they're basically going to a store to basically get an unlock code that allows them to play the expansion that's already on their computer. And it's just this weird thing of like we're so deep down the rabbit hole of patches and updates happening automatically to all of our games that the concept of buying the next update is actually like a weird, like it almost feels like this weird archaic process at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially because console systems, I mean, there was no crossover with the computer. It was just, you had the canisters and everything. There was no means that you could patch your games on a system that couldn't even connect to the internet. But now all of the consoles are capable of doing that, and you can get them digitally too, at least the games.
That used to be a go-to thing. Like, I played Halo 2 back when it was brand new, and until then, the entire concept of getting more content for a game that's already out was actually completely foreign to me. Like, I don't know if it had happened before, but I think that was the first time it happened on consoles, at least, and I went to a store and bought maps for my Halo 2 game to download off the disc into my Halo 2 game. Because that was a thing you could do on the original Xbox.
That's pretty old school. Yeah, I don't actually remember the first game that had like a built-in updater. Like a built-in update tool.
That game eventually had almost as many DLC maps as it had in its original disc, which was a totally foreign concept for a shooter in 2004.
I mean, I'm trying to remember one of the first games that I was familiar with that had an expansion as opposed to just a sequel.
StarCraft was definitely pretty early in there.
A lot of RPGs.
I want to say.
I also know that like Alpha Centauri,
especially on PC,
had one.
Actually, exclusively on PC. Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have Diablo 2, Lord of Destruction, you have StarCraft, Brood War, you have like 3 expansions to Morrowind. Did Baldur's Gate have an expansion? I think, or did it not? I'm sure one of the Dungeons and Dragons RPGs had an expansion at some point.
Baldur's Gate 1 did not. At least not that I remember.
Not until recently. When the controversial, like 20 years later expansion was made.
Yeah, I heard about that. I mean, it was only really controversial because people are petty. Though apparently it was kind of ham-fisted. And anyway, I don't really want to talk about that. Baldur's Gate 1 did have an expansion? See, I don't remember that.
I have nothing to say about it anyway.
Yeah. I don't remember Baldur's Gate 1 having an expansion, but Baldur's Gate 2 definitely did. And that was the one I played. In fact, it was the only one I've beaten, I think, of all the Baldur's Gate games. Baldur's Gate games are hard as shit, like the original ones. They're not easy. I tried playing them. I played it semi-religiously, but it just kicked my ass 7 ways to Tuesday.
I've always wanted to go back and try experiencing one of those games. And sometimes one of the interesting things is trying to figure out whether or not something's hard because it's too complicated and hard to understand, or if it's hard because you're an idiot child, or if it's hard...
We played it over Christmas.
Oh, this Christmas?
Yeah, this past Christmas. It's bullshit. We did everything, and we were coming out of like the first major dungeon, which we fought the boss like I think 6 times over, and it took like very careful planning to not lose people. And in that game, like death was a pain in the butt. And mind you, like this is my brother at the helm, managing everything, pausing constantly, and all sorts of stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I was just the idiot tank cleric that just sat there and would heal after combat because.
Oh right, I forgot Baldur's Gate had multiplayer.
Yeah, it did. It's actually like a pretty good system. It's just really slow, and
that's really weird to think about. I mean, it should be slow because it's isn't it actually a D&D game?
Yeah, it was D&D first edition rules, I think.
Huh.
I mean, you haven't lived until you have a party of 6 fighting a multi-armored beast that swings 3 different types of swords and has a grapple, and you have 1 hour turns of calculating what dice rolls are. That's just... Faithful D&D expansions are inherently long-winded.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why, like, I don't want to do a Baldur's Gate game, on my channel especially. I wouldn't mind, but like,
I mean, neither of us finished Pillars of Eternity, which is basically that concept.
Yeah. From my perspective, I would rather just play Divinity Original Sin again, because as goofy and kind of awful as that experience could be, it was much more streamlined than I think any other like, CRPG ever will be.
Yeah.
To some extent, yeah. I mean, it kind of XCOM'd it.
Yeah.
We never did get back to Skyrim. Was that because it bugged completely for us?
Oh, well, yeah. Modding the shit out of Skyrim is a special kind of process.
Yeah.
Super fun,
it was
though.
a failure.
On an earlier topic, because we were talking about, like, loot in games and how, like, the concept of flooding the player or not giving them anything, basically, in different cases. I feel like one example, and I kind of want to talk about the game in general, too, was, like, an example of a game where the loot was weirdly underpopulated was actually Technomancer.
Yes, I was kind of surprised.
And it didn't feel like a good design decision necessarily. It just felt like a thing where they just stopped making items for the game at some point.
Yeah.
Because, like, in Technomancer, which is the new BioWare-style game from Spiders, much like Bound by Flame and everything, where, like, they have everything about your character development and your weapons and everything involving your stats of every basic component of the game, it feels like the game is pared down in a way where it's not even meant to be. Like, on some level, you almost think, like, maybe it's like, oh, it's meant to be, like, really clear, and they're streamlining it in, like, a Blizzard fashion to make it more accessible in certain ways and make it more clear what upgrades and downgrades are and stuff. But it mostly feels like they just don't want to complicate things, so they never have to balance the game by keeping it. I think that the secret Spiders has, because I've played all of Bound by Flame and I just beat Technomancer, I think between the two of those games, their secret is that they don't actually want to have a difficulty ramp for their games at all, despite being an RPG. So what they do is that they have a skill tree be your primary way of leveling up, and your skill tree gives you different skills to use during combat. But at almost no point do you actually increase your stats. At most, it'll be like, oh, I can put a point in Constitution to give myself 10 hit points. And then you start the game with exactly 100 hit points. So it's the most, like, comically simplified, easy to, like, manage numbers as a developer of, like, okay, the player will have anywhere between 100 and 150 hit points ever in the entire game, and, like, you bounce around that.
I get the feeling they didn't even want to have an RPG leveling system.
Yet they keep
just
making
went
them.
with it because they didn't know what else to do. Like,
Weird,
I think what they want to do is almost make, like, a Dark Soulsian thing. And
which is weird because even Dark Souls has super heavy amounts of character changing over time and progression.
Yeah. But I don't know. I will agree with that, but it also does feel like, to some degree, Dark Souls is kind of immutable. Like, yeah, you do change your character and stuff, but they could actually do away with that system, put everything on an even scale.
Yeah, they could Devil May Cry it. And just let you play through the game and beat the challenges as some sort of static character, or pick, like, one of 3 for different playstyles. Like, you could totally make you could make Dark Souls that game if you wanted to.
I'd almost prefer that, actually. The leveling system isn't bad, but, like, playing Hyperlight Drifter, which was kind of a big old boss rush, like, yeah, I guess you did get extra healing kits. And, like, okay, that's a good way of progression. But I didn't feel like I needed a leveling system. I did feel like in Hyperlight Drifter...
Hyperlight Drifter was more Mega Man, where you get new abilities over time that open up your variety of options for dealing with things, but you're using each ability at the cost of not using other abilities, such as what gun you equip and stuff like that.
You know, I will actually admit, I feel the same way about Setsuna, actually. I don't feel like Setsuna needs a leveling system. I don't even notice the fact that my characters are leveling up, since it's such a minimal increase at all every.
Do you find Setsun to be like a little overcomplicated? Like not in its like combat's straightforward. Everyone has turns that happen at certain timings, and if you wait longer, that you can do stronger versions of your attacks. And there's combos, and it's all like there's only a few actions during actual combat. But the progression system and the sprite knights and the fluxes and the sheer number of sprite knights you quickly realize the game has is actually kind of horrifying at some point.
It feels like they had a lot of cool ideas, but the way they express them is kind of bad. Like, the sprite knights was definitely like I felt like they were trying to go back to the... Oh shit, what were the upgrade things in Final Fantasy VII called? Materia. Like, it felt like they were trying to go back to Materia or whatever.
I only know how to pronounce it because they say it in the movie.
Yeah.
Which reminds me, there was that new movie.
That comes out in a couple weeks.
There's a I was really confused because no one mentioned that there was going to be a Final Fantasy 15 movie.
Yeah, I had no idea either.
So I didn't hear about that. So I saw the trailer in a vacuum. So I thought they were I thought that was Square Enix not learning from their mistakes, because Final Fantasy 15, the game coming out right now, used to be called Final Fantasy 13 Versus, because it was Final Fantasy 13, Final Fantasy 13 Versus, and Final Fantasy 13 Agito. And there was that whole thing where it went from being a 1-13 trilogy to being a different 13 trilogy, because we currently have a trilogy of 13 games, being 13, 13-2, and Lightning Returns. But Agito became Type 0, and 13 Versus just became 15 for some reason.
Yeah.
And I thought, when I saw that trailer, I'm like, well, this isn't Final Fantasy 15, because I played the demo and saw those characters, and this is like a different era entirely. I thought they were making the mistake again and already starting to make spin-offs of their new number before it even comes out, because I thought this was a Final Fantasy 15 companion game, just like the original planned trilogy of 13s, until I saw it was a movie.
Is this movie going to serve as a prequel to the game itself?
Yes.
Because
I'll watch it. I've enjoyed on at least some level every Final Fantasy movie so far. They're not great, but they're enjoyable, weird things.
They're not great, but they're also not bad, which I think is part of it from my perspective.
Yeah, because like Final Fantasy VII Advent Children is like a 90-minute fight scene. In particular, the final fight scene that you feel like is the end of the movie, when you look at the time bar of how long the movie is actually 45 minutes of a 90-minute movie. Like, half the entire movie is that ending fight scene. You don't realize how long it is.
Yeah.
Like when the whole crew comes together to fight the super monster, transitioning all the way to the Sephiroth fight, that entire part of the film is half the film. But in Spirits Within, it's just too weird and memorable not to be something that I am happy I watched, at least.
Spirits Within was the first, and I think only kind of weird, creepy undead. Like, I'm gonna call the spirits kind of an undead-y thing.
Phantoms.
Yeah, the phantoms. Like, that's the only one that I think I've actually enjoyed, the undead.
I thought it was really cool how they would, send their tendrils into people and just rip their spirits out of them.
Like, I just remember the, running from the city scene from that movie, and it just being really cool watching the, Marine group fighting them and being like, this is pretty awesome, actually, and I wish I could play this in a game.
That, and they had some interesting stuff about how, there was the potential search for a cure, and they had to find the right frequencies, and, they were able to create some kind of shielding to send them back. They always thought that they were an invading force of energy beings instead of actually being ghosts.
Unfortunately, if I can remember correctly, the story ultimately just kind of collapses under its own weight, though. And I think, if I remember correctly, the protagonist also has that weird Final Fantasy VII female protagonist problem where they just kind of sound like they're out of breath all the time, and they don't have much emotional range.
Well, with her, she actually had one of those spirits. I don't know how it could infect her or keep her alive, or it was somehow sealed inside her.
I would like to point out specifically that I think that was the first time Square Enix ever had to pick voice actors that spoke English.
No, that can't have been.
You're right. 10 probably
10
came
would have
before.
come sooner, yeah. Although I don't know which one takes longer to make. Those are really similar times.
Well, that's the other thing, too.
But that was also bad.
Yeah.
I think they'd actually, for Spirits Within, they actually animated them speaking English.
That was the
With
good
their
part,
mouths.
Is it was
And
animated.
they intentionally lip synced it.
I mean,
No,
I think it was a theatrical release.
I've totally grown desensitized to bad lip syncing from anime and whatever.
I just had a thing where, as far as I could remember, Dr. Ross spends, even though she's having all these crazy things happen around her, and she's the central points of all this crazy stuff happening, she's, as far as I can remember, she just kind of looks like she's staring into space the whole movie and not really emoting at all.
Half the time she is, because she has these visions, and then she promptly faints afterwards, being like, "Oh no!"
I'm watching the reactions in my chat, by the way. Apparently, most people don't even know Spirits Within exists.
That's because your chat is literally younger than Spirits Within.
I actually looked at my average audience age. It's gone up over time.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, I've talked to people in your chat that are younger than this movie.
This is true.
This movie's 15 years old now, and you have like 14 and 12-year-olds in your chat, and so like we're talking about something that we think of like not that super long ago, but like it's impossibly long ago. Here's something weird, because I'm looking up the IMDb now, and it's weirding me out. I found out that the protagonist of Spirits Within is played by Ming-Na Wen, who is the best character in all of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is just a weird thing to notice. She's the badass like pilot character from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that is like the best part of the whole show. So. Which is just that's bizarre. Yeah, she plays Agent May, which is just a fantastic character. So that's weird.
Watch it someday.
Weird transition.
Well, who are the other actors? I know that there were a couple.
Alec Baldwin, Steve Buscemi, Keith David. It's silly. The cast of that film is silly with how many people are in it. Donald Sutherland, James Woods, Gene Simmons.
Who is Keith David?
Big names.
Keith David played Mr. Admiral or whatever Anderson from Mass Effect. He's in.
No, I know he did, but who did he play in Spirits Within?
Some council member. Literally his role as councilman member number 1. He doesn't have a name in the credits.
You know, they probably just were like. They probably just like sent him an email. Hey, we'll pay you like $100 if you do this. And he's like, okay. Here's your line.
I mean, he has a history of voice acting, so I bet it's just normal for him. But it is funny.
That's where I first heard him. Disney's Gargoyles.
He was apparently the narrator of Princess Mononoke. Yeah,
well, he was also Lord Akoto.
We have to escape this. I just realized we're playing the IMDb game. This is an inescapable hole.
So I have a topic.
He's the white boar.
Actually, I still wanted to finish with more of Technomancer still.
Okay.
Because we didn't go much in that, so I finished that game now. And I gotta say, I know that every now and then I see a video on your channel, and I'll read the comments, and I'll be like, every now and then somebody will be like, where's Technomancer? I don't really recommend going back to Technomancer.
I'm okay with that. Yeah, it was one of those where I was playing it because I didn't have anything better to do. I will say, the one positive for Technomancer, soundtrack was pretty good. I was pretty okay with like some of their better songs.
Oh, wait, do you see their sex scene soundtrack? And it's hilarious.
Ew.
It doesn't fit at all.
Are they just...
they basically played rave music during the sex scene. It was like, what is happening right now?
My favorite.
So, in any case... I just remember that the characters were especially cringeworthy in Bound by Flame, because Wander and I did go through the entirety of that. And, because, I mean, what was it? There was the young woman who was fairly optimistic and such, and then there was the witch lady.
Mattered.
There was
the only character that was kind of okay was the mutant guy.
That game was so short that it didn't deserve to have the number of cast members it had. Because you could beat the game in like 8 hours or 10 hours, and it had like 6 party members, and it was extra idiotic because in that game you could only have 1 party member with you at a time, period, which meant it was physically impossible to spend reasonable amounts of time with any of the characters. It's 2 in Technomancer. It was actually somehow one character in Bound by Flame.
Oh, it was only 1.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
It's like you couldn't meet your characters, really.
It really feels like Spiders is trying to be BioWare, but like they don't have the budget or the skill.
Especially if they're adding things like those romance options and stuff.
I will grant, I feel like gameplay-wise, it was a market improvement over
Bound by Flame, which isn't saying much.
Yeah, it's
that game controlled horribly. Like, really horribly.
It was not pleasant.
Do you know one thing that I dislike about all the games that we've been talking about lately? I mean, at least the Bound by Flame, BioWare even ones as of late. It seems like they've been really going for this edgy, dark, possibly dystopic, the world is coming to an end, or it's past that point and everyone is without hope.
I like
and
games where the characters have fun more than once.
Huh?
And that is a surprisingly low number of video games.
Well,
that's actually what Dragon Age is good for, is having a cast of characters that are kind of enjoying themselves. And the problem is, like, less that the world's ending and more that there's just a thing that has to be stopped. Because, Mass Effect is like, the universe is ending right now. This is basically the story of the Mass Effect trilogy. And, Bound by Flame is literally like, you grab basically the tree of life by the neck and just make a decision about it, what the fate of the universe is, but then the game cops out and just ends right there, so you don't even have to worry about the ramifications of your final choice or anything. But that's how apocalyptic it is in its nature.
Well, I really wish that there were games similar to those where you do have a lot of choice, but that actually has, a likable, varied cast, a lot of really like lush, vibrant zones or ruins or places that are just awe-inspiring as opposed to grungy and
So you want a game that has like BioWare party members but a Final Fantasy setting?
Yeah.
Because Final Fantasy games, a lot of JRPGs lately don't develop their characters very well, really. But a lot of Western RPG games lately are all dark ending worlds.
Yeah.
Right. And I know that this was something that they had said happened with films and comics in the 80s, but I just don't like it.
The Dark Ages.
I know how we're just spiraling back into that.
I mean, a lot of it is follow the leader. There's a lot of games that did really well by being X, be it, world is ending, like Dragon Age 1 was a very dark fantasy game, and it did fabulously. And so a lot of fantasy RPGs kind of followed the leader straight into that, for better or worse.
The one to play that's not a dark fantasy game is actually Dragon Age 2. It's literally just like it's like a weird 3-episode story about somebody trying to it's a family of refugees trying to make their way in a new city that's foreign to them. Basically, is more or less the story of the entire game, and it's just a series of 3 different struggles. And they're not like the world's ending. Like, one struggle is literally like, oh, there's like sort of like an occupying army, and they're not here to attack us. They're kind of just occupying, and like just living with like a weird outsider that's stuck in your town. And then another issue is like interpersonal problems between 2 groups of people that don't get along with each other. Like that, it's those kinds of plot lines instead of the whole like another Drake is going to consume the cosmos. Or whatever was going on in Divinity Original Sin, where
Divinity Original Sin was
a galaxy dragon was going to eat the planet.
That was a backdrop for you and I setting shit on fire and having a good laugh about it.
So the interesting thing about what kind of plot lines you were talking about earlier with the army and the groups that are sparring against each other, it almost sounds like the kind of quest that they would have on a planet-to-planet basis in Knights of the Old Republic, if you remember, where you have the overarching story of, here's the Sith, and they're trying to take over the galaxy, planet by planet, blah, blah, blah.
And by the way, the thing about BioWare games, they never stopped making that storyline. All of their subsequent RPGs for all of Dragon Age and Mass Effect are that same structure of you go to a location and have a weirdly encapsulated story that's separate from the driving force over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is always the local problems.
It can make sense from the perspective of, like, I remember with Mass Effect, it was you have to convince the different races to approve of the council or joining your forces, etc. What was it? I mean, Knights of the Old Republic, it was just finding pieces to the Starforge.
It was a MacGuffin story, basically, right? Like, there's a mystical device, let's go get the pieces of it so we can finish the game, and that's our excuse to go to all these locations to have mini-stories happen.
Bonus points if they're, thematic, like, here's the jungle.
So here's an issue then, though, because we brought up, like, this... like the similarities between stories in different games and so on and so forth, and like the idea of a driving force of End of the World and everything like that, and that's even in Bound by Flame. You guys have played some chunk of Technomancer, right? Was it one of you or both of you?
I played two. I think
so you played
Technomancer.
Technomancer. Can you tell me the story of Technomancer? What's it about?
I mean, honestly, the first half is
hard, right?
You're just a cop, but
kinda
there's
hard,
some
right?
guy that's like kind of coming after you. And then that stops, and then you're like, well, I guess now what do? And other people are like, do this thing for us, and you're like, okay.
Well, aren't people being miserable and dying of radiation on Mars or something?
Yeah, but that's not the plot. That's a backdrop.
It's just a setting thing, yeah. So here's the thing, and this might count as spoilers to some extent for some people for Technomancer or something. You guys don't care if I say stuff about the game, right? Because you're done with it at this point.
Do not care whatsoever.
It's not good, by the way. The story's not good, anyway. But, so, you're in the first entire chapter, which has the Bound by Flame problem of the previous game, where the first chapter was mostly side quests, and it's where most of the side quests are, so it's going to take up most of your time.
Is that how you build your party, though? Usually they have your initial quests lead you to party members.
Not even that. No? That's the weird thing. Yes and no. That's the weird thing. If you do every single side quest in all of Chapter 1, you can end up meeting each of your eventual party members at some point. The weird thing is that they never join your party at any point during any part of all of Act 1. So you beat a third of the game without having a single party member that's going to be with you for the rest of the game. So that's already weird. But then Act 2 starts, and you get 100% of your party members simultaneously.
Yeah, it's kind of this weird culture shock. The weird part was, I didn't actually realize the final boss of Act 1 was your party member.
You didn't notice it was Jeff?
No, I had no idea, because he had the armor on, and he was suddenly an asshole. Because he's just some
generic white guy. It's so hard to tell. You have to you have to memorize everyone's really boring names to know who they are sometimes.
And, like, I will admit, I was actually pretty okay with Jeff. I thought he was kind of a neat character. Kind of this, like, farm boy, whatever. Super positive. He was a little weird.
That's the other thing,
for an RPG, but I was okay with it.
They need to be more creative with the various races and stuff.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I know that Technomancer was just about, humans colonizing Mars, so there weren't going to be aliens or anything of the sort. They did have mutants, but the mutants they just look scarred or especially disfigured.
They look like they're covered in tumors and stuff or something.
Yeah.
And they have, like, skin conditions. Like, in Act 1, one of the big mistakes they made already was that I think they wanted to be some kind of surprise, right? When your party members straight up betray you. Because they both leave you for different reasons and are just gone from the game, and that's it for both those people. You never like Jeff doesn't come back whether you leave him alive or not. Doesn't matter. It's not. He's never going to show up again. But they kind of messed up and like over foreshadowed it on accident because party members in Western RPGs are known as being like this colorful cast of different characters from different walks of life. Like that's kind of the trope, but it's also the only way to make it consistently interesting. And like Bound by Flame already knew that because they had like the crazy witch girl, and they had the elf archer, and they had like different people from different groups and everything like that. But your starting group in freaking Technomancer, admittedly two different histories. One of them is supposed to be the fresh recruit that's all doughy-eyed and everything, and the other one is like this hardened vet that's like cynical. But both of them are just white guys with buzz cuts and armor that are just there to follow your orders. And so when they betray you and then are immediately replaced by a colorful cast of differing characters with different backdrops and different personality types, suddenly you're like, yeah, that was kind of a given, wasn't it? Because they replace it with like a red-headed girl that swears a lot and is an engineer that has her own personal mechanic rover, an eccentric doctor, and like a singer.
I know it's a trope, but don't they call them the wrench wench?
Probably, yeah.
Just it's
that's horrifyingly rhymey.
Yeah, it's it's essentially the mechanic girl.
Yeah.
I actually have not heard of that trope before.
Well,
I've never heard it before.
Think of Firefly. Like
I understand
Keely
the concept.
and...
Redheaded girl that does them. That's slightly off from the rest of the characters, and she's the mechanic. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've never heard that name ever.
Yeah, I've never heard the. I've never heard the
if you ever go to TV tropes, you'll just one link after another link after another link. You'll find all these fun names for tropes.
I've got a buddy from high school. He actually watches sometimes, but the guy definitely read too much TV tropes.
They would just start counting out. They would start shouting at every trope they see by name.
Well, no, we'd be like at a club together, and he'd be reading TV tropes.
Oh,
yeah.
You'd be what together?
Wow.
We'd be at like anime club, and you'd be reading.
Like people say, people say, "I bet you're fun at parties" as a joke, but that guy is the person that they say that to.
He was a nice guy.
I know, but like that's just like the concept of like that phrase comes up when you're the person doing like annoying corrections or something at a party and stuff like that, and you're talking about somebody who is out in public and focusing on a website that's all about like corrections and like overuses of things and like little small details about stuff. So it's like it's somehow like a sentence in living embodiment.
It doesn't necessarily illustrate how these things are overused, these conventionalities, or I suppose, but they just have names for typical things like, you know, the last of his kind and ancient aliens.
I mean, we totally
the
understand. It's just the perspective of like
the big bad, the 5-man band.
It's more just the fact that he'd read this in public places. It's okay. Anyway,
like, so
I want
to just talk about the story of this game though, and where I was going with it. Like, so what happens is chapter 1 wraps up with you getting chased out of town by a guy who you saw twice before and didn't seem to like you, but apparently he really doesn't like you because he's actually the villain of the entire game. But there's like almost no setup for it.
The entire point of the guy is like he wants to learn your deep dark secrets, and you're like, no.
Yeah, he wants to know that technomancers are secretly also a form of mutant, basically. And so he drives you out of town, puts all of the other technomancers basically in prison for existing, and he takes over the entire city. But then, like, all of Act 2 is just you're in another city, and maybe he's infiltrated the city, maybe not. Let's do a bunch of side quests. And then all of Act 3 is, let's go to a different settlement that also is supposedly safe from him, while also trying to deal with him behind the scenes. But he's still just this weird background thing of, like, he's almost not a threat, because he's just a guy that he took over some city you don't live in anymore anyway, and you already freed all your friends from him, so he's just kind of a dick that exists somewhere. And the plot it refuses to ever let him go, so it's like, oh, I guess we have to keep dealing with this guy because the plot won't let me go anywhere else. But what's really tragic about the game and where it really falls apart in really hard ways is that Act 3, and I'm just going to tell you what happens at this point because of how fascinatingly broken it is that in Act 3 of this game, you spend the entire act doing a series of missions that are supposed to undermine this guy politically, to unseat him from his throne in this kingdom, like all the corrupt politicians and the support of the people and the support of like the mafia network. Like, you're supposed to basically do a checklist of like, let's unseat his power in 5 different ways, and you figure you're going to go towards some sort of like crazy like court proceedings where you like try to get this guy like indicted from his role in the government and stuff like that. And, like, you think it's going to go that way because that's how like you would tell a story like this, right? Instead, what happens is you do all these things that are supposed to remove him from his role. Your reward is a 5-second cutscene of him sitting in a room that's completely alone, looking kind of sad or a little bit disappointed, while vague, echoey, shouty noises happen in the background to sort of express that people are dissatisfied with him. And then the entire concept of his leadership, or unseating him from the leadership, or any of the things you did to do that, are never mentioned again in any capacity. And that's more or less like the climax of the game. Like, you spend literally an entire act of the game trying to unseat him from power, and not only is there no like court proceeding or like big takedown moment or like final showdown with Saren where you argue about your ideals or even like a fight, Like, he just seems to suggest that maybe you won, but maybe not, because they don't talk about it in any capacity to say what the results of your actions were. And then the game just moves on.
Yeah.
So it's what happens after that is that you go to this moon base that's supposed to have a connection to Earth, and he's just there, and you kill him. And then that's the end of his storyline. And, like, there's no interesting direction it goes in. He literally doesn't acknowledge the fact that you spent the entire chapter unseating him from his power. So, like, your actions of the entire last, like, 5 hours are not ever acknowledged at any point by the game, period. And it goes nowhere.
He just doesn't turn around and say, so you are behind everything.
Yeah. All that really happens at the end is that he knows the Technomancer's secret, but also he's a mandatory boss fight, and he's going to die when you take him down. So you just fight what is essentially just the rogue class of the game, where he has a sword and a gun, and that's it. He's just a generic NPC that you fight, and that's the end of a storyline that was literally the entire game's story. And it's like,
do you know
it's hilariously inopportune and, like, inept.
What they should have done instead, I know that this would be cliche, but what they should have done instead with that is, so let's say he's obsessed with the fact that, you know, the Technomancers acquired their power by being mutants, whatever. But instead of doing the whole, we should lock them all away so that they don't pose a threat to us, it should have been, let's lock them up, try to discover their secrets, and see if we can become even, like, greater mutants. And, like, it would have been cool, sort of like Resident Evil-y.
Yeah, but this guy was kind of like Hitler with the whole, like, well, maybe not Hitler, but, like, super blood purist type.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that, but then
he's a leader of a group of people that hates mutants and is trying to find a reason to get rid of Technomancers.
Well, then maybe they should have found some way to destroy mutants or prevent mutations from occurring in the future.
Oh, he didn't care. That was free slave labor for him.
I mean,
unless he was having them, like, power all the electricity in their city or something. Is that what you mean?
Well, no. So, the mutants were the only people that were able to, like, deal with the sun.
Really?
Yeah.
Ah.
So the point was the mutants were kind of there.
That's actually how they escape. On a regular basis, the mutants are escaping because of the fact that they can survive on the surface when humans can't. Like, out in the open during the day and everything, without the shadow paths and stuff like that. Like, the mutants can just kind of, if they escape their pens, they can kind of just run across the countryside, which is how there's, like, a whole secret, like, mutant society out there that is, like, a haven for them if they can find out about it and escape to it. But, like, there's extra details of crazy stupid, though, in this Act 3, because much like Bound by Flame, the entire game just falls apart and loses its mind and just becomes this incompetent, horrifying mess during Act 3. So, during the main story, one of the quests they give you for trying to unseat his power is you can try to free all of the mutants from the pen, from the city. But, also, another character also gives you a side quest to free mutants from the pen in the city. And you might think, oh, weird, that's weird how they have overlapping objectives, but I guess I'll just do it and I'll win at both. They're referring to two different sets of mutants in the same pen. You free them differently somehow, for some reason. And it gets even weirder, because the main pen of mutants, like, you have this really elaborate plan where you have to, like, figure out how to build a bomb so that these people can explode their way out of the pen into the underworks and take a secret tunnel out. The other people, though, the people that are hidden behind a second locked door for the side quest.
Get out of the way.
Like,
princess.
Shell.
Sorry.
You have to kind of explain what the hell's going on instead of just flailing and then
She's just
yelling
randomly reacting to video games right now.
No, it's not video games. We've got
not even that
infestation
that,
like, got out of control. And
so
there's
been a severe drought.
Here, I'll go get it.
There's been a severe drought outside, and they've been coming in through his parents' window somewhere in the basement. But there's just, for a while, there were ants everywhere. You couldn't sit still in a room without 5 of them crawling around somewhere. And while they did take the poison upstairs, and it seemed to control the kitchen situation, they haven't taken the bait down here. And now there are tons of these queens, like these potential queens, princesses that, are twice as large as the regular worker, have wings, and they're searching for A, mates, and B, a place to dig a hole and create a new colony. So
is the situation is just actively getting worse, basically?
Yes and no.
We've been killing a lot of them, and I haven't seen a single drone, so...
Like, it's actively worse in and of the fact that, there are bigger ones, but there are less ants overall.
Oh.
So, it's weird.
Yeah, so
and
now
gross.
There are few ants, but there's a lot of princesses.
Yeah, so it feels like the nest is desperate and trying to, expand out before the queen dies, probably.
Or who knows? Who knows what they do?
It mostly just results in a ton of these dumb ants wandering around my floor, getting killed, and then rinse repeat.
Yeah, I noticed they don't fly, which is bizarre. I mean, one of them must have flown up into the light the other day. It was funny, because I look up at the light for no reason at all. You know how sometimes people have that weird suspicion that they're being watched or something? I look up at the lamp, I notice that there's a princess inside it, and then it comes to the lip
This is in the middle of us recording, possibly leading up to a boss fight.
Yeah, and just as I look, it comes to the lip and tries falling on my shoulder, and instead it fell to the floor, and I promptly squished it. I was just like, wow, if I hadn't looked up at the lamp, it would have just plopped right on us.
Huh.
It's obnoxious.
Looking forward to moving, huh?
Yeah, very much so.
The really disgusting thing, too, is you can squish them, and then I noticed a day later, there was one that we hadn't picked up, and its antenna and head was still moving, even though all of its body and
It's gross.
I've been really lucky so far with where I moved, where I haven't had any infestation problems at all. And I made it through 2 summers now where I've not been suddenly swarmed with spiders, which in my previous home in California, summer is when suddenly you find out about every hole in your house because spiders are just seeping through them all summer, and you have a terrible time.
Ew.
But I haven't been getting any.
I remember looking at when we were still considering Texas and other places, and apparently roaches were a real problem. It must be terrible just having bugs coming in.
Roaches are so much less worrisome to me just because they don't have this implied thing where they go after you necessarily.
Actually, roaches will eat your eyelashes.
Well, they
What? What?
Yep.
Your eyelashes?
If they're hungry enough, they will go for your eyelashes.
That was the most weirdly specific thing.
Why not your hair?
Because for me, of all the insects, the ones I hate the most.
I was just reading about roaches, and they will just straight up eat your hair.
Well,
for me, the worst thing to have in your house and know it's there is always any variation of mosquito. Just because you're this thing exists and it's in here. It's hard to see because it's made of tiny sticks. And it's literally there to suck your blood. And it wants to do it on the sly.
when we were in Croatia, we had I suppose it was good for me. Wasn't so good for Wander. But we would wake up in the morning, and there would be these full, fat mosquitoes sitting on the walls. And I would squish them, and they would just burst. They had already had their fill of blood. They'd be full of
Wander blood.
But they'd be full of Wander blood. I didn't get a single bite. He got bitten up the wazoo.
It wasn't so bad because I'm from Minnesota, which has fuck tons of mosquitoes, which I'm not okay with.
Well, these were Croatian mosquitoes, and they loved you.
Yeah. But, at the same time, not cool. So, I wanna take us away from the topic of bugs.
Can I just do the last one topic of Techomancer, just because we keep diverting all the time? Mm-hmm. Is the I mentioned the thing of there's a stupid thing where 2 different quests both involve slaves of the same pen, and they're somehow 2 separate quests, and you have to do them separately.
Does it require you have to leave and then return to the same pen?
Yes. You free one by blowing up a tunnel. You free the other ones by literally unlocking their cage, and then they follow you out on foot, and not through the blown up tunnel or anything. You literally walk them through the city and just try not to get them killed. and you can't cross the wires or in any way make the solution of one be the solution of the other one, even though in both cases you're freeing slaves from the same pen.
Yep.
But another really stupid thing in this game, because it just completely loses its mind and nothing makes sense at some point in this game. So they vaguely set up, like, you meet Phobos. He's the mutant tough guy from like the cover of, like, all the artwork of the game and everything is one of your party members. And then you meet this one other guy, I forget his name, but he's like anti-Phobos. He's the mutant that's a big strong guy too, but he's a dick and he hates humans. And you find out that there's some sort of like outskirts of society secret mutant world. There's a secret mutant city somewhere. When you get there, you immediately kick the tough guy's ass and defeat him and never see him again, so he's out of the story immediately. Then the game shows you Phobos and someone named Scum. Scum is some character you've heard about as being an escaped slave, and some people like him, basically. The game immediately asks you, even though you just walked into Mutant Valley for the first time ever and have never been here before and only recently even found out it existed, you get to choose which one of them becomes the leader of their entire society. Immediately.
It seems like something that you would only do after you had accompanied them on a number of quests.
Or like at the end of the entire act that takes place in their society.
Yeah, because, I mean, think about, what was it, Mass Effect 1? Was it where, because, you elected what? That,
I mean, the Mass Effect series is full of picking one leader over the other leader, basically.
Yeah. It's like if you had to pick between the Geth and the
Quarians or something?
The Quarians, without the whole, like, Geth are actually, like, very understandably good.
No, but I would say the more equivalent situation would be that slimy counselor versus Captain Anderson. Or Commander Admiral.
Yeah,
it'd be like playing a Dragon Age game and picking the side of either Templar or Mage when you press start at the beginning. Instead of after meeting those two factions and their various complicated moral problems. Because, like, you get to this mutant area, you meet Scum for the first time. Phobos has been around forever, obviously. And it literally, like, it's not like you're not in an open world. You can't walk up to each of them individually and have conversations with them like you do in every other game. It literally, you're stuck in a dialogue situation where they just gives you an option of one or the other, and you can't do anything but pick one of them.
Yeah, and so...
And it's baffling.
One game that did it very well was Guild Wars 2, when you had to choose which faction that you were going to join. One of them was the straightforward, we're the soldiers, we're going to defeat the zombies with brute force and our superior weapons and such. There was another faction that was all about trying to research ancient magic and ruins and figure out how to defeat the zombies through means like other than brute force.
I don't know. I don't think that was a good decision.
And then there was no, but how they employed it.
Nah.
No, listen, hear me out. So then there was the last faction that they were sort of about what was it? Spy, subtlety, infiltration, whatever. But so what you did was you had a very long racial starting area where I think almost the first 30 levels you just learned more and more about your culture, depending upon what race you chose. And there were 3 representatives, one from each of the factions, that pop up, and they are members of your race. And the leader is just sort of like, hey, these guys want to take you on a couple of quests. But for each quest, you could only choose between 2 of the 3 factions, and they always made sure to alternate which 2 you could choose. So you had an opportunity to work with one faction, with each faction at least once, and then the other 2 factions twice. And that sort of helped you ascertain, who do you really want to work with? What missions do you prefer doing?
It also didn't matter. Really, it was just slightly different flavor.
But it determined what kind of faction and what kind of quest you were playing for the next 20 levels.
Like, it didn't... But it also didn't matter. Like, in the greater story point of it all, ultimately you ended up on an airship shooting a dragon, and it changed nothing.
It just changed all the quests in between.
It just changes flavor. Whereas, like, this one was, like, supposedly this, like, big, important decision to be made. And it's just like, well, here you go.
No, I'm just saying that it gave you an opportunity to have an informed decision about which faction that you were choosing.
Well, yeah, I'm going to say it's better than Technomancer, but that's not... That's like saying...
I'm still really fond of Guild Wars 2. I wish we could go back to it someday.
We know.
Yeah. I got one last thing just to warn people away from Technomancer, is like, from a gameplay standpoint, like just progressing through the game, a huge problem that becomes apparent is, like, I don't know how much of the quests you did in Act 1, but you probably noticed that you just keep walking back to Eliza Major over and over again for the entire game in Act 1. Just over and over again. Because that's, like, the only way to progress at anything. What quickly becomes a problem is they kick you out of that city after Act 1, and you're an outcast. So now, everyone attacks you on sight. So what happens is Eliza Major, you still have to keep talking to her, but instead of putting her somewhere useful, like putting her like at the bar in the slums where you could reach her easily or something, and she's going to meet you on the sly there in a place where people won't notice or something. No, she meets you at the main military base of their entire organization, but over by the railing on this one, like on like the chain link fence, basically.
And you have to always sneak there.
Yeah, the problem is that you, the only way to get there is you enter through the Underworks, fight through a really specific path of the Underworks, which features multiple doors, which means you can't get past them without clearing all the enemies attacking you in the Underworks, because you can't open doors when you're in combat. So you have to do multiple fights in the Underworks themselves, and that includes a large fight against about 5 to 10 human enemies, some of which have armor and guns and grenades and shit. And then you get to take the stairs that take you to Eliza Major in her new spawn point. And you go there like 20 times over the course of the game, over and over and over again, fighting your way across that same path. I've had to edit so much footage out of my own playthrough to make it watchable because of how often I have to walk through all of that nonsense every single time. And what's worse about it is that if you even take too long, the enemies can respawn behind you. So now on your way out, you have to go back. And every quest you do, it feels like at some point you gotta hand some kind of information to Eliza Major, or you're getting a quest from Eliza Major, or some quest tells you to go ask Eliza Major a question at some point, and you just keep going back to this really specific path and fighting the same NPCs over and over again because they couldn't put them in a reasonable spot, and they couldn't put fast travel into their game at any point, or make any reasonable way to get to that spot. So you, over the course of the game, you probably spend a total of like 2 hours just clearing the way to this one NPC over and over again to just progress various main quests and side quests. And it reaches a point of absurdity where every single objective over the course of the entire Act 3 just has her again at some point. Every time.
She really should have gotten the memo that you were a rogue element and very wanted.
I'm sure she realized, considering her bosses literally were hunting you. But
yeah, she's like conspiring with you and everything, but it like, and as far as I can tell, she'll always conspire with you, no matter what your reputation was with her during Act 1. But they make it the most agonizing process possible to visit her, despite knowing full well you're going to do that over and over again. And that's the real problem with this game, is that like it has writing problems and has gameplay problems and has progression problems and all these weird oversimplifications and issues, but the biggest, most glaring thing is that the game as a whole has no respect for the player's time, because that actually more or less summarizes the majority of interactions in the game, is that the game has a small number of NPCs, a small number of environments, and just has a whole lot of quests that say walk around this environment and talk to 3 people, or walk through this specific path to turn into this item to this character that you've went through several doors to get to, and like that kind of stuff happens just over and over again until the game finally just rolls credits. And you can't help but wonder, like, why couldn't this game maybe invest some resources in not making a bunch of filler garbage and instead make an ending? Because it kind of doesn't, like I told you, like,
or
the final...
to have different quests with different game mechanics. Like, I know that there are some games that employ puzzles, or...
Instead, the game is 20 hours of fetch quests followed by the entire main story ending in a super underwhelming boss fight against just a normal enemy, like a human enemy that has no special details besides being harder. And then after that, like, the game realizes its own mistake, because as you approach the final relics to finish the game, it's like, oh, boss monster! It just throws a monster at you that you've maybe heard mentioned by name once, but has nothing to do with any story. And that's the final boss fight, just like in Bound by Flame, where it's a super boss with 1 billion hit points, and it's so tedious to fight.
I'm surprised you didn't reference the fact that the first boss didn't even know where the player character was.
Yeah. So, no, they doubled down on that, Wander. They doubled down on that. So, for people who haven't seen the beginning of Technomancer, the first boss doesn't target the player ever. He just swings around and runs around and attacks the board. So it's like fighting some Legend of Zelda bosses, basically, except it's not designed to be that kind of weird top-down and platformy sort of like avoid the danger zones boss. It literally is like it looks like a Dark Souls boss that doesn't know you exist and just attacks random parts of the map. So the game has a 3-act gladiator tournament thing where you have to come back once per act to do the next set of 3 rounds for the gladiator tournament. The final boss of that extended plot point, of that extended side quest, is the first boss of the game, and he still doesn't look at you or target you, and still just doesn't fight you directly, and is the most anticlimactic thing ever. And your grand
who is
reward
the first boss? Is he a human or a monster?
It's a nothing. It's a nothing. This game can't incorporate gameplay into story, so all of its important bosses are just some monster that's there, and that's it. It's just a monster. Huh. And to further cheapen it, the first boss of the game is used as a gladiator boss, so it's not even a unique enemy, because apparently that's just a thing that's everywhere. But when you finally take it down in the arena, your grand reward for bothering to come back to that location 3 separate times to do gladiator fights is 300 serum.
Which is kind of meaningless because...
What's serum?
It's just money, gold, whatever. In Bound by Flame especially, one of my favorite... Well, not Bound by Flame, Technomancer. You had this like whole moral dilemma of, you know, do you kill people for serum, for extra money? Except for, like, you get all this, like, random junk equipment that you just sell.
Whoa. So what is serum? Is it something extracted from people?
They don't ever tell you.
Nope. It's, kind of.
What is serum used for?
Okay, they didn't tell me as far as I went.
Well, it's weird, because serum is what... I think they mentioned at the very beginning of the game and never talk about it again, so it's one of those problems where, like, I kind of have lost track of what it is, but it's something that's good for humans surviving on Mars, I suppose. And I think they established it but never mentioned it again, but every single time you fight any enemy that's human, you can hit Y to drain their serum, which kills them. So something about serum is helping people live somehow, but it's an entire plot point that's just kind of thrown away by the game and never really discussed again, despite the fact that it seems to suggest that all of human society are basically some kind of drug addicts, like in how in Human
like
Revolution
Bioshock?
you need like... I don't know. I don't know.
Well, they were probably trying to go for Bioshock.
It's one of the 500 undeveloped concepts in this game that they never finished making, and instead just padded out with nonsense. It's such a garbage purchase. This is a common theme
with you for this game specifically. You're trying to overthink it.
She's not. That's the thing. She's not overthinking it. She's asking the most basic questions the game should be answering, and maybe even dealing with its primary plot points. She's thinking harder
than the developers did.
Yeah.
And she's expecting there's reasonable, smart people that made a game.
I'm trying to figure out why they included these story elements.
And but they don't have an explanation. You could come up with 1 billion answers why, and you'd still be wrong because they don't know.
Yeah, that's the problem. You're asking where
to Adam, or if you're familiar with Star Wars, there's this race of vampiric beings that take what they call soup from sentient beings, and it's essentially just their mental energies and their minds. And they sort of have like these wriggly things that come out of their faces, and they take it from your nostrils. Well, your brain, technically, because the tendrily things go up into your skull. But in any case...
Now I'm just thinking of the parasite monsters that control your brain in Star Trek. In Next Generation.
You mean the DATs?
They're not a unique concept.
Yeah,
there's the
they're brain worms.
There's the Yerks. There's the...
Even
brain worms.
Even Futurama did the inevitable brain slug.
The inevitable brain slug.
So, well, I just mean like it's inevitable to include.
That could be a trope.
Yeah, we can move on to what you want to talk about next. Wander.
Okay.
No one buys Technomancer. No one. No one sees Suicide Squad.
Oh,
it had ideas.
I hadn't seen it, but I knew from the trailers it was going to be terrible. So I decided, no. How was Will Smith's performance in that?
He's Will Smith.
He's just Will Smith.
He hasn't really messed up anything besides that After Earth movie where he monologued for the entire film in deadpan. But that's good. That was a garbage M. Night Shyamalan movie, so...
That was a Scientologist propaganda film, from what I remember.
Speaking of, isn't there another M. Night Shyamalan?
So in other words, it was sci-fi?
Coming
Which is
out
what Scientology is?
Fair enough.
It's a religion invented by a sci-fi author that was just isn't in itself also sci-fi, but he said it was real that time. And I can't even offend people because no one believes in Scientology except for like rich people that sue you.
This is true. I wanted to roll back to this. So somebody actually showed up in chat. Oh yeah, we should probably say this. We do take questions on this podcast, so YouTube comments or otherwise.
Yeah. Although we do spend a lot of time on tangents sometimes, so it's hard to divert.
Yeah, we don't take every question, and chances are we're probably not going to take most questions.
Yeah, but if you have a question,
unrelated,
you can say it in the Twitch chat, or you can say it on the comments of the videos, and we'll try to keep track of the ones that we want to get back to later, and we can bring those up at some point, because we're always looking for topics to talk about, because this thing just happens.
But, so somebody actually showed up to my, to the early part of the podcast, to ask me to stop uploading so much.
I get that too.
That 7 to 10 is too much, and I should go down to at max 1 or 2.
Whoa, okay.
That's exactly the sentence I get. Is every one time they're like, you should only upload 1 video a day, and I'm not going to at all analyze the ramifications this will have on all of the shows I like on your channel.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I don't know how many of you use Facebook anymore or other things akin to it.
I mean,
but I actually have found myself, not unsubscribing per se, but muting or unfollowing, but still remaining as a quote-unquote somewhat watcher to various people, because sometimes there are instances where, whatever you've added the person for, they aren't putting out that content anymore, or if they are, they're putting out droves of other things that are of no interest to you. So
or in Facebook's true use, like on some level, the intention is kind of just to be in contact with your friends and stuff like that. And so it's hard, but so many people have these bad habits that make me unfollow them too, because there's certain people that just start spewing like what's basically hate speech or just political fervor and are angry all day, and I don't want that to be my entire feed. And other people that just don't have a threshold, so they'll post like 50 things a day, and the timeline will just be them, and you're like, I don't even remember you that well. You're someone I added 3 years ago, and you end up unfollowing them too.
I find there's a lot of the political stuff lately, and then also just I've noticed, especially amongst some of my more like acquaintance, like not even inner circle of friends, like friends that are acquaintances but not quite like friends. A lot of, at least the girls, post things like, oh, look at my boyfriend and I, we're having so much fun, and selfies and things of that nature.
This is a heavy tangent.
Huh? Sorry. And I'm just saying, I don't want to see that. I really don't.
Yeah.
I just gotta feel for Wander because he keeps trying to divert this topic, and I just realized, he is like talking about people saying to post less, and then immediately we're having a conversation about Facebook for 3 minutes, and he never made it past the first sentence.
Sorry.
I literally.
I'm just saying that there are circumstances in which too much is too much, but
at the same time, like, you can pare that down yourself. And okay, so I'm gonna go back to this, but
for you guys, you depend upon your multitude of videos to get views.
Yes.
I mean, it is literally how we eat food and pay rent.
Mm-hmm.
In this case,
so I've been stalking your Reddit comments recently, Keith, just because it's kind of fun to see like what you respond to, because you usually respond to the stuff I'm interested in reading ish. As opposed to, like, fluff. I'm specifically
I go to reddit.com/let's play, and or r/let's play, and I just sort by new and basically just tell everyone why they're an idiot all day. It's rough because it's the same questions every day. Every day.
But so a lot of people specifically have been asking like how many episodes should I upload? Or like every once in a while I'll just come across your comment saying like, yeah, I put up this many videos. And people are like, how do you do that? Or like, why do you do that? Or you shouldn't do that. It's the age-old game theorist, don't go above X number of videos
There's the
per
problem
day.
where, MatPat makes a video, and it's literally just him interpreting data, and even having an element of confirmation bias where he's only looking at specific samples of data specifically related to him and drawing his own conclusions based on a narrative. And it's all inherently not super conclusive because none of his videos are that conclusive. He just wants to put them out there, and that's what he does, which is fine. But then the entire Let's Play community starts quoting everything he says like it's actual law and fact of how the mechanics of YouTube work, which is weird.
MatPat he's called the game theorist. He comes up with like random theories.
Oh, I see. I think I've heard of him before.
It's the game theory channel, and he invented this concept. As far as I can tell, he made it up the concept himself of like the idea of subscriber burn. Just suggesting that if you upload too many videos, your subscribers basically disappear over time or stop watching videos forever.
Well, some people do get annoyed by constant notifications, and then
part of it is like there are ways to sort your YouTube like subscription feed. Like people talk about how I'm spamming, whereas like from my perspective, I have every channel ordered from like how often I watch them. And they have their own row, so I don't actually even see
it would be
spam.
Nice if you want to look at someone's channel, then you know that they have this kind of output every day. Therefore, you don't need to get notifications for every single one. You decide yourself to visit their channel to see if there's anything new. Like, I suppose the reason why the subscriber system might be difficult for some is because if they're subscribing to several people as opposed to just a couple of favorites, then they could definitely...
It's an issue specifically because there are two YouTube layouts. There's the one I described, and then there's the just straight-up Facebook feed, which is the problem. Because from my perspective, I don't have to worry about it. And from these people's perspective, me putting out 10 videos a day is a legitimate problem, especially because half of them are only subscribed for, one series. And there's not much I can do about that apart from just being like, hey, I can't help you.
It would be an interesting thing if someone is subscribed to a playlist.
Yeah.
Couldn't they try to conceivably do something like that? You can do that,
actually.
For a long time, I actually wished that I could subscribe to YouTube channels, but then unsubscribe from specific playlists.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Because I watched I would of course watch like Rooster Teeth since I was much younger, and they would add new shows to their channel over time, and I would not care about a lot of them, basically. But there's no way to filter those kinds of things out. Or like if you watch say the League of Super Critics or whatever, which would be like Nostalgia Critic and Spoonie or something, or I don't know. I lost track of how many names are on there at this point. But like, maybe you don't really want to watch the show about there's a show called Needs More Gay, and there's the comic book guy, and like maybe you only care about 2 of the shows on this channel, and that's totally a thing that is a weird lack of functionality on the website, because it would be kind of useful. But yeah, I tried to explain to people before, because I actually did an episode of Q&A with the side of Minecraft where I discussed this exact topic for like an hour. And it's just a basic logistical issue where you have to find an equilibrium here, because people want you to play all these different games, like the upcoming No Man's Sky or Mankind Divided and all these other games as they come out. But games are long. Like if you play them a half an hour at a time, some of these games are episodes upon episodes upon episodes. Like, I'm on my way to my 200th episode of Witcher 3. And if you were doing 1 episode per day, then what? I play Witcher 3 for almost a year and no other games on my channel ever? Like, that's that's the suggestion of that thing people do. When someone says make 1 video a day, period, they're saying, they don't think about it, but you're going to be stuck playing 1 game forever, basically, and ignore every other game you could possibly be playing. And that's a problem for multiple reasons. One, because that person doesn't speak for everyone. A lot of people are totally cool with the amount of videos coming out. And also, people already only choose one game or another, or these 3 games, but not those 6 games and stuff like that. Like, people already only want to watch certain shows and don't care about other shows. Like, this is a podcast that itself is a thing that a whole chunk of each of our audiences doesn't themselves care about. So, if you randomly, the more you pare yourself down to only doing 1 or 2 things, the more you increase the chance that you're just uploading stuff that no one cares about, because you're only uploading 2 things, and neither of those are the things people want to see.
Well, and then also you guys who are very dependent upon your views to get the ad revenue in order to keep yourselves afloat, it would almost make sense to cast a wider net than be specialized and risk not having the cumulative views account for enough. Like, unless you're just a megastar and one video out a day gets thousands and thousands of views, then sure, you can afford to put out 1 video a day. But if you're everyone else, have to put out more videos to get those couple thousands.
And also just to cover things, like all the counterpoints of channels that play games but only do a couple videos a day, or like 1 video a day, or 3 videos a week or something like that. You're usually talking to people like Game Grumps, where they'll play 1 game for like 4 months sometimes, and that's like their output, more or less. Or you're talking about people like PewDiePie or Markiplier or Kraken, where Kraken will play, like 1 game for months on end. PewDiePie and Markiplier, by and large, they usually make like 1 video for the game and then move on forever.
No, it's just like highlights of them playing, which totally makes sense. But for what Keith and I do, which are generally full playthroughs, like, it's impossible. Like, if I wanted to do a full playthrough of I Am Setsuna, on top of meeting the demand for Fallout, Kingdom, and Scrap Mechanic on my channel, like, if I did 1 to 2 a day, what would it be? Would it be 1 Scrap Mechanic a day plus the occasional something else? Because that's my most popular thing.
Also, things
would it be like 1 of each?
You couldn't edit down to 1 highlight video.
Oh yeah, absolutely not.
Sort of.
If you wanted
to
with all the things that people want to see you play on your channel on a regular basis, you'd basically have to keep up with all the new games coming out and all the ones people want. If you only want to do 1 video a day, you'd have to basically play every single game forever for exactly 3 episodes and stop forever. And that'd be the entire series for every game. Because that's how you keep your output low, is you just don't cover games to any extensiveness. But there's an inherent sort of hypocrisy here, or maybe it's not, because maybe that person isn't one of those people, but like, it's definitely a fact that there are people who on both of our channels like the fact that I'm 200 episodes into Witcher and you're almost 200 episodes into Scrap Mechanic, and want us to play those games extensively, but also like other things existing besides that, and that's why all those videos exist.
Well,
and it's a total arbitrary line to try to figure out where your limit should be.
I wonder then if it is more advantageous to play shorter games than longer games.
It is.
Or like roguelikes in your case.
No, well, sort of. The problem with like roguelikes, for example, is it's a very limited genre. So if you're...
they can also go on forever if you decide to do endless runs. Whereas
but the problem
a game
is,
that's
like,
only 10 hours long...
If a roguelike, if I don't get any new roguelikes, suddenly I'm kind of stuck. Like, I love Northern Lions content, but ultimately the guy mainly plays a couple of games because the alternatives in the market suck.
Yeah.
Like, really
and there's
badly.
Just the issue of, like, shorter games are easier to get through quickly and not have them stack up. Like, when Abzu came out, I played the entire thing in 1 sitting, and then I uploaded all the episodes the next day as just 1 continuous playthrough that people could watch in 1 day. And I was like, wow, that's convenient. When you can just burn through a thing and it's over. The same thing happened when, like, Inside came out, and when I decided to play Portal, it's like, I just played through the entire thing in 1 sitting, and it's over. I'm like, well, that was easy, as far as scheduling recordings go.
That's an interesting concept, too. I know that Wander in particular, if he's recorded a series, he has his quote-unquote backlog. And he makes sure to only upload 1 or 2 episodes at most of a series, even if he has considerably more. Whereas you just mentioned that you released all of Abzu at once, as opposed to staggered it. Did you find that...
the exception, basically? Like, I like having daily uploads for basically everything. I can't... It's not possible to know.
No?
You'd have to somehow have the exact same audience cloned onto 2 different channels, and then upload the same game in 2 different formats to be able to actually have data over which one does better in that context. Because Abzu itself is a different game from every other game I upload, so then I can't gauge if it gets more or less views from being all at once or over the course of a week, because I can't say how well it would have performed otherwise, because it only happened once and it's different.
Well, this is something. So how well does how well does the first video do in comparison to every subsequent video after?
Oh, it's a well-known fact that Let's Plays the first episode and the finale are the most viewed episodes of the entire series every time. Once you just give it some time.
The drop-off was less severe because the people that watched episode 1 immediately could go to episode 2 rather than wait a day or find it on someone else's channel?
It's kind of immeasurable, honestly.
Yeah, it's like
every game's different too much to know. Yeah. Honestly, but here's the thing, Shell. On the earlier topic of you brought up the idea of why don't we just play these short games then, because it's more convenient for scheduling. The problem becomes what about when your channel's famous for not playing short games, which is exactly the kind of hole that we've both fallen down in our own different ways, intentional or not, or pretty intentional in my case. But Wander's played hundreds of episodes of various roguelikes and has hundreds of episodes of Scrap Mechanic. I play RPGs. I play weird exceptions to the rule, like Inside and Abzu, but I play RPGs.
The difference with that, though, is your RPGs have a conceivable beginning and end, and they have a plot that goes throughout. Whereas if he really wanted to, he could stop playing any of the roguelikes at any time, because there isn't an overarching plot he would have to worry about.
It was just meant to be a response to you saying, oh, why not just play shorter games if it's more convenient? And I'm saying, that's... My channel's built around not that type of game, really.
I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying I wonder if it is advantageous to some.
It's actually more advantageous just baseline YouTube to do short stuff and whatever. But that's ultimately... Yeah, if I wanted to truly maximize my growth on YouTube, I would more or less follow the PewDiePie highlight short games, wide variety, trying to get as many SEO hits as possible. And I'd hate that.
And we know a lot of channels that work that way.
Yeah.
Have you found that there have been people that have been successful releasing an older series versus just continuously chasing after the next new game?
Well, I'd say I'm successful largely in that way. If I chase for only the new games, I think I'd get bored really fast. But I do that. Game Grumps specifically chases a lot of its series and just kind of moves on randomly, but they play mostly old games too.
Yeah, they literally just... you can even hear the beginnings of episodes of Game Grumps where they just admit that they just grabbed something off the shelf and don't even know what it is. Yeah. And that's how they run their channel, which is exciting and fun, but also there's almost no commitment to it.
Just give them a game and they put it on their massive shelf, and they're just
basically, we'll they have a PO box and people sent them hundreds of games.
And then
it pays to be
anywhere
famous.
from Barbie to...
That's why they... Wait, they have played Barbie games? I loved my Barbie games when I was young. Detective Barbie.
I wouldn't recommend watching their Barbie playthroughs.
They played Bratz.
The thing
my one friend had Bratz dolls, and they were amusing.
The thing about their playthroughs is they're about as low of reverence as you can possibly get.
Well, I can understand if I went back to play them now. The thing about the Barbie games that was hilarious is that she actually had pre-recorded a pre-recorded phrase for every single name that they could think of. So I could find my name, and Barbie would, be in a terrifying situation, a shadowy figure had just walked about.
She was a regular Codsworth.
And she'd be like, oh no, look at that figure, Michelle! It's so terrifying! And it's just So
here's the funny thing is that nowadays, with bigger budgets and bigger scale and everything, Fallout 4 tried to do the same thing with Codsworth. It'll try to say your name out loud. And Keith was not on the list.
Wait, Keith wasn't?
Yeah, Keith wasn't on the list, but
he wouldn't say
was.
Keith. He would say fuckface, and he would say all sorts of memey, stupid joke names. But so many basic names were not on the list, including Keith.
You see, the Barbie one, it was all like pre-recorded, so there were a limited number, and it was all done in the same voice, the same high-pitched hi kind of voice.
I actually like console commanded my character. I used the console command to bring back up the special book that's at the beginning of the game to customize your character, to change my name on it to Sebastian, so at least he would say my name.
Oh, so he could actually say Sebastian.
Yeah, I had to hack him, to basically hack the NPC into just acknowledging me properly. It's such an obnoxiously long list of names, too, and they don't have, like, some shockingly basic ones, but then, which makes it really dumb when you notice all the really stupid names they did include as a joke. And they never got around to, like, so many just regular-ass names.
Was it one of those bizarre robots that actually tries to sound out things, or was it?
It had a straight up like British dude voice name, like it was just a voice.
What about inflection? Unless it was a robot,
no,
so
no,
it
no.
had the
This
same.
is not text
it was a
shell.
full human voice. It was just a normal human voice talking.
It's like
so how did they make the name flow
like Wheatley
with the
from
sentence?
Portal 2. He talked like Wheatley from Portal 2, like that kind of like it's just a character type voice.
There's a very real possibility that like he's just saying the whole line or something. It's not that he says your name often.
Now there's someone in chat saying Keith's a normal name. I've never heard that name ever in my life. I'm like, oh, you sweet summer child.
I mean, there are definitely names that like fall out of favor, and I'm not saying that Keith isn't a dinosaur's name, but
I remember when
you're
I was
definitely
little,
a dying breed.
When I was little, I really liked the names Kyle and Keith, and then I end up with a Carl. So
there's a hockey player with my exact name. Like there's just an actual hockey player named Keith Ballard, and there's Toby Keith and Keith David and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, question. Seeing as you actually are like glib with your last name, has anybody ever actually like bothered to find you?
No.
From your audience? Huh. Fair enough.
They haven't even really found like even like the most easy things. Like I've never seen acknowledgement of anyone in my audience finding like websites I frequented in the past even.
I think my issue is that as an illustrator, I'm going to have my real name out there. Pretty much.
And then you get the weirdos. And you get moments like how Boogie was like, I opened the door and I didn't have my gun and it was such a mistake. Oh my god, I could have been in so much trouble. Which I think was a real... Yeah, he opened his door to someone that turned out to be like a fan, and he was panicking about the fact that he didn't have his gun with him. And like he could have been in serious danger because someone found him at his house. I think it was Boogie. I'm pretty sure.
I see.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was Boogie. I know Gassy Mexican had a kid that wanted Gassy and company to take him to what was it? What's the cult movie where Rocky Horror Picture Show? There we go.
Oh, okay.
Fan wanted Gassy Mexican and company to take him to Rocky Horror Picture Show with them.
Oh,
yeah, super creepy.
Well, I mean, didn't a YouTube celebrity of some kind like die this year, like being killed by their fans?
She got shot, but she had like
Christina Grimmie.
She had a concert, so like it's not that she was like shot in the quote unquote safety of her own home. This is like
it'd be like if Starbomb got attacked.
What happened with
on
her
tour
is she would stream covers and then her own unique songs on YouTube, and then she went on The Voice, and I think the team she was put on was Adam Levine's, aka Maroon 5. So, I mean, she got really big that way, and even after the competition, I don't know if she won or if she was one of the runner-ups. I think she was a close runner-up, perhaps. But, you know, most of the people that go on American Idol have at least a short stint on their own, but I think she was doing better than most because she had already had her YouTube fan base and everything else. And yeah, supposedly this creep had expressed to his coworkers that, you know, she's gonna be my wife someday, and
oh no,
I love her, and blah blah. And so I suppose
those people are real.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They have a surprisingly short threshold. I think Wonder and I both have had one or more people now that have been had kind of obsessive over an entirely one-way imagined relationship,
I had somebody in chat.
There was that person trying to
30
imitate
minutes ago?
me.
Well, there was somebody pretending to be Shell. Well, not Shell, but Wander's fiance. I actually had somebody
not knowing Shell existed. Apparently,
she had said girlfriend, and then people were like, "You must be wrong because if you were, you would know that he's engaged."
I had somebody in chat. I want to say about half an hour ago. Wanderbots Bew or something.
Bo.
Yeah. They tried saying a couple of things like "Wander, I love you," and I was like, not gonna respond to that.
I mean, I think you might remember me complaining in the past about like someone who used to show up to my streams all the time.
Yes,
and they would just be like, "Keith, friend," all the time. Like we're talking about like back when we were playing like Black Desert. They kept talking like they were like an old friend of mine from high school, and kept like being weirdly buddy and like with their language for no reason. And I've never. Like, I don't know who they are, and it was too weird because they were like, why? It's like they would act like a friend that you're neglecting and not inviting to into your group things enough and stuff like that. And I'm like, why is this attachment developing? It's a thing where it's
apparently it was Wanderbots Bay, but like still.
But they said they're still here.
No, they're not.
They are.
I just checked. They're not still here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something I've actually heard about from Game Grumps before. Is this idea where like Aaron Hansen's talked about the concept of going to a con and having a fan encounter them at the con, and they're really happy to see them.
That there's
but
security.
Then, well, I mean, like the fan shows up and they encounter them, and the fan's super happy to see them and everything. But then they like get into like arm's reach and they kind of panic. Because that's the moment where it finally dawns on them, perhaps, like the realization that, like, while you have heard this person talk a lot and have associated a lot with their personality, and you feel like you relate to them a lot, it dawns on you in the middle of the con that, like, but I've never met them before, actually. And so then when you're about to say something to this person, you can't think of anything. And so when people meet people like Aaron, what they end up doing is they just start shouting his jokes and his quotes at him over and over again because they don't know how to start a conversation, and they're just like this is the thing I associate with you, and then just start shouting like lines from his animations at him and stuff like that, and it goes a little too long and it never goes to a conversation because they panic, and that's what happens. Like that's
what's been interesting is whenever I had met with celebrities, like specifically voice actors at conventions, usually I'm in some massive suit of armor. So I remember I had met Johnny Jan Bosch, who was the Black Power Ranger in the original Mighty Morphin movie, but also voices a ton of anime characters. And so I go up to him and I'm like, oh, I watched you since I was a kid and stuff, and it's fun to meet you. And he's like, oh wow, you're dressed up as Samus. I absolutely loved Metroid and stuff. I want a picture with you. And it's like, yay. So we got pictures together, and he signed my Power Rangers merch. So I don't know. Like I would just hope that people would approach them and be like, "Yeah, I'm a real fan of your work. You're an inspiration to me."
Well, I think that the difference there is that you haven't been exposed to constant interaction.
I think the Ego Raptor thing is like that's probably still going to be the standout thing. It's not going to be the norm.
Yeah, it's the people that get obsessed, basically.
Yeah.
Like, the difference with you is you just met somebody that, like, oh, yeah, you know what they did, and you've seen them and stuff, but, like, at the same time, it's kind of different.
You're not stalking them every day.
Well, yeah, it's different to see, like, oh, they played a character in a voice role. They did a good job, is very different from, like, they literally talk about stuff for hours on end on a thing I watch, and I feel like I'm part of their life, which is what kind of happens in the YouTube setting.
That's actually
and it leads to these one-way relationships where one person gets really attached sometimes and the other person has never met them before or had a conversation with them, and there's no reciprocation involved there, and it leads to this rough thing where you kind of can't even acknowledge it even when it gets creepy or weird, because if you ever in any way deny any element of this, it immediately takes this dark turn where it's like this elitism, where now they think that, oh, you think you're better than us and that you're above us because you can't deal with us. It's like, no, it's just I just don't know you, man.
What's interesting is, I think the only thing that chat really knows about me are my weird encounters with various animals I think. And by weird encounters, I mean, like, the raccoon that died in the tree because it was too fat.
People will latch onto anything. But, like, I actually came across a comment from one of my fans talking about how I was such a, like, stuck-up jerk and, like, already an elitist and whatever, because, you know, just because I've managed to achieve some level of success on YouTube. And I'm just like, I mean, you're right and you're wrong, because most of it's just, like...
It's mostly a logistical problem of you can't meet all these people. Yes. You just can't. Like, we're streaming right now, and your stream has 87 people. Imagine that. Like, in high school, if you had to deal with 3 classrooms of people merged into one room and they're all looking at you, like, how do you interact with all those people? And how do you do it when they keep changing? Because it's not even... That's not the grand total of your entire fan base. That's literally like a specific group that's here right now, and they will circle out and be different people tomorrow to some extent. And you have to keep track of all these names and all these personalities, and often, like, you can't know all these people. Socially, people don't function that way. And so it's like it's not like we think we're above anyone, or that you don't deserve to be in our Let's Plays or anything. It's like we're just trying to do the thing. It's a weird thing.
I'm just trying to pay the bills so that I can move out of my parents' basement.
Like, it's a weird thing where, like, they came here and subscribed for one thing, and all we want to do is just continue doing the thing that they wanted us to do in the first place, but then they start adding additional expectations onto that in a weird way sometimes, when it really, we just want to keep doing the thing that was why they're here in the first place, and that's not enough for people sometimes because of the weird relationship that starts forming in their heads. I just want to go back to the whole, like, 1 video a day thing. If I did that, judging by, like, how many views I get on a video, I'd probably not be able to move out until I was at, like, a couple 100,000 subscribers. Oh, yeah. I mean, like, I talk in our Slack group that's with some of the larger YouTubers we've met that are way larger than us. And sometimes they're baffled by the concept that, like, I have some level of financial independence when I only have 20,000 subscribers.
I looked it up, and I think we talked about this a little bit last podcast, but, like, I'm actually getting close to matching the Completionist in terms of, like, just
making a lot of videos is no joke. Like, if you ever watch some show that makes, like, weekly videos or bi-weekly videos or 1 video a month, and they ever talk about needing financial support to keep doing what they're doing, they're not joking. Because holy shit, they do not bring in views, and people watching their videos is what makes them make money in the first place. And those channels, while their individual videos may do exceptionally well with your Vsauces and whatnot, like, they're high production, very carefully edited and scripted, like, impressive content in many cases. But because they're infrequent due to how long they take to make, those people oftentimes don't make a profit, and they often actually. Despite why you might even think that they work at that thing full time, and actually it's their side hobby because they can't physically support themselves off that super famous 1 million subscribers channel that you know them for. It's weird. YouTube's weird. None of it works the way you think it does. None of it works the way I think it does. None of us know what we're talking about. Stop listening to us.
Somebody brought up Quill18 on how he will, like, add his subscribers' names on the, like, in the game, like XCOM and stuff. I used to do that with Darkest Dungeon, and I stopped
did that with Darkest Dungeon and XCOM.
Yeah, I actually stopped with Darkest Dungeon. Now I only take creative naming suggestions because people were actively abusing me for not using their character enough, or getting mad at me because I killed the character off too soon. And I was like, what? I'm sorry?
I got lucky there. For me, it was just people. The worst thing that would, and it wasn't even really that bad of a thing, is that the worst thing that would happen is just people repeatedly requesting to have their name in the game. Was pretty much like that's all that would really happen. No one ever. I never had drama about how I used people's characters or anything. I had one amazing day where this character named this guy. Someone down there has a YouTube channel named like Vanille or something like that. And in my comment feed, like I named a character Vanille, took them on a mission, and then literally the next episode they died. and then one day I opened my comment feed, and I just saw Vanilla's comments, and they were like a week late to even watching the episodes. 2 consecutive comments in my comment feed were "Yay!" and "No." So they watched the tiny lifespan of the character named after them. You can have fun with community interaction like that,
yeah.
But it's just sometimes the community itself will ruin it, especially if they're jealous, because they're the one that didn't get picked about something.
Yeah,
that's
I
rough.
had a number of people that were crabbing at me because they didn't get a character named in Guild of Dungeoneering. I still get comments on Guild of Dungeoneering because I think I still show up in the search results for it. People asking to be in the series, and I'm like,
I'm no longer making the series anymore.
That series has been over for a year now.
Yeah. There's a thing where small kids, like siblings, will have they'll get popsicles or whatever, and one of them will be slightly different shaped and maybe slightly longer, and the other one will immediately be like, why didn't I get that one? That's not fair.
Oh, for
me, don't treat your YouTuber that way if you like them. Don't.
For me, when I was
we're dealing with so many people. Just be happy that any of this is working at all.
Tighten that.
Just accept that we're trying to bring people in, and don't ruin it by immediately being like, but that person lived longer, or got a better gun, or got their name spelled out slightly differently. Just don't.
This
we're trying to do something nice, and you're immediately ruining it.
I actually went back and checked, and I killed off most of my most dedicated subscribers in the first go, and I felt really bad about it because the people that lived never showed back up again. They were a one-time person, and I was just like, huh.
Oh yeah,
that's super. That's the one of the funny things is. Yeah.
About the whole popsicle situation, I was terrible as a child when it came to colors. I absolutely loved purple, and I always felt slighted if someone else got something that was purple, and it was the exact same thing that I got, and
you monster.
Mine was yellow or orange, and I'd be like,
literally the opposite color from purple.
I'd be like, why couldn't I get green or blue? Why did it have to be yellow? I know. I think there were a couple of occasions where I was upset about it and cried a little bit as a child, and then they ended up giving me the purple thing, but then I realized I shouldn't do that anymore because that was just being selfish, and maybe someone else wanted a purple something.
And you eventually realize just how pointless it is at some point of wow, I was getting really emotional over something that doesn't even slightly matter.
Well, and so I remember when I was doing summer camps, teaching children with disabilities and stuff about what was it? Building little starships and other fun things. And so the teachers are like, yay, we have this pack of different colored things. And I was just thinking to myself, oh, no, they're different colors. And sure enough, some of the kids were like, I want the green one. No, I want the green one. And then they were fighting over it. And it's just like, oh, no. I mean,
that's probably the easiest place to cut it, actually.
Yeah, actually. I
had a glance at the camera, and I'm like, wow, it's been 2 hours.
Yeah, we've been talking for a while. I'm like, I don't mind this, but at the same time...
It's because we fell down the rabbit hole of talking shop.
Yeah.
Well, we just start talking about the thing we do.
It is that.
And not any of the games we play.
You guys can't possibly tell me that you haven't fought over what color your character is in a board game, computer game, anything. No?
Don't give a shit.
When I was a child...
It mattered to me in Monopoly if I couldn't have the Scotty dog or the top hat, but
as an adult, I'll usually ask for purple or blue, and then if I don't, but if somebody else got it, I'll just grab one of the other colors and move on with my life.
Right.
Granted, I have days of the week sometimes where we sit down and we play 10 tabletop games in one day because we have group gatherings for that stuff. So,
neat.
I would be actively a problem for my entire community of friends if I was being ardent about colors that I get to play in a game. But yeah, so as a side note, Bird and I sat down a few days ago and we both watched Suicide Squad, the new DC movie, and we both hated it. Neither of us recommend it in any slight capacity, and we think it's a horrible garbage movie. So, if you'd like to hear about our opinions of that at all, we did that as a sort of a side thing. It's about an hour and 15-minute discussion because we start off with some basic opinion stuff, but after a few minutes it turns into a full spoiler cast of just discussing significant details and all the things that are wrong with this movie. If you want to see that, on my channel or Birds, it's a separate video. On Wanderbots' channel, I believe it's about to play like right now after this podcast.
This is going to be a long video.
So if you've been wondering why this upload is like 3.5 hours long, it's because the Suicide Squad spoiler cast is coming up next. So if you're on Wander's channel, stay tuned for that.
Yeah, so if you're only watching this podcast for me, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Probably watch it anyway.
Watch the analytics graph for how long people watch and see it cut off right now on your channel.
It stopped like 15 minutes.
All I know is that my friends were complaining about how Harley Quinn and Joker's relationship wasn't what it should have been.
Let's not
Harley
get
Quinn
into it.
and Joker's relationship has no reason to be in the film. It's not a good movie. It's to give you guys a vague primer of what kind of movie this is, and this is opinions that vary from what I actually said during the spoiler cast in like the detail here. Like, I watched Man of Steel and I did not like Man of Steel, but in that movie I came out just being like, oh, well, that wasn't enjoyable. Like, it wasn't a fun superhero movie, but it also, despite being kind of depressing and dark, it wasn't like, didn't give me like emotions or make me think about stuff. It was just kind of dull because Zack Snyder doesn't have great range and doesn't make interesting movies oftentimes. No, this isn't that kind of bad movie. Suicide Squad is like Green Lantern bad, where you're baffled actively while watching it how bad and stupid every single moment of it is for its entire runtime, and you can just feel how 17 different people all changed the film without talking to each other via like was it those groups, the control groups, and like producers saying people like this, so it has to be in the movie, and like none of that movie. The final product that made to the film is not anyone's artistic vision. It is a disgusting product that 17 people wanted specific things to have happen, and the only people enjoying it are people that already decided to enjoy it beforehand. And I get the feeling a lot of those people are going to have like their Star Wars The Phantom Menace realization down the line, where they eventually like go back and look at it again and like, oh no, I liked this when I was 9, but oh no, I see all the problems now.
I think it's one of those things too where, I mean, many of these films have a difficult enough time trying to handle one hero or one actor.
You're still in podcast mode. We should be in podcast ending mode. I just want to put on the brakes because this video is going to be 4 hours long if we keep talking movie.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, we talked about the difference with the ensemble cast problem.
Yeah.
That definitely comes up in the spoiler cast. So we covered that. It's cool.
We can talk about movies that we've seen. So thanks for watching, guys. Stick around if you want to see. Well, not the live audience, but the YouTube audience. Stick around if you want to see the spoiler cast. Live audience, you guys are getting me for Kingdom.
Thanks for watching, like always. We'll see you next time.
And give us questions. We like questions. Yeah.